I guess the first thing I'd want to talk about is how we started approaching interview subjects for this, because you can imagine that would probably be a problem if you're hoping to get high-level CEOs involved in this kind of conversation. You know, one of your main points is that the corporate form itself is psychopathic. So what does that say about the people who actually are in charge of the companies? It's really an ethical question that you run up against, because we didn't say the full story. We didn't give away this part of the film in our approaches, but we didn't lie either. You can't lie. I guess you could, but it's going to allow for a particular kind of filmmaking that's easily open to attack and dismissal as propaganda, et cetera, et cetera. And we were honestly interested in hearing what the people in those positions at various corporations had to say about how their behavior is impacted by being in an institution that requires a certain type of activity. So what we did is we hired a researcher, and her job was to tailor each approach to each interview subject in a particular way. We were also very lucky because we came at a particular time when the idea of corporate social responsibility was a new thing. During the 70s and 80s, of course, there was a lot of groundwork done by the ecology movement, human rights movement, et cetera, to start to get these questions of how we should behave on a grand scale into the atmosphere. So there were a few CEOs that actually started to, that wanted to be seen as being at the forefront of being in the corporate social responsibility movement. So once we got one person who had that point of view involved, who was from a major company, it became easier to bring in other people. Of course, it's easier to get people like Noam Chomsky, et cetera, to be involved in that sense. But for us, the struggle was actually getting the right CEOs, the right economists, et cetera, involved in this, so we could have a broad range of views on this topic. Yeah, so we certainly weren't the first filmmaking team to do this idea of tailoring interviews or tailoring approaches and withholding certain information to actually get the interview, but but it worked for us. That's a very good point. There were only two people that I can think of. One was during shooting, which isn't exactly what you're talking about. Michael Walker from the Fraser Institute there. We interviewed him, and then we kept shooting him in the office when he was on a phone call, et cetera, and he wasn't too happy about that. But beyond that, I mean, the Ray Anderson, who you saw there, who was really one of the breakthrough characters of the film, as the sort of environmentally aware corporate leader. He said that he might not have gotten involved if he'd known the premise of the film. That being said, he comes out looking really good in the film, and we weren't out to really attack anybody personally. When we approached these people, the way that we pitched it was, this is a documentary on the birth, evolution, impacts, and possible futures of the modern business corporation. So it's a very kind of bland statement that's open to a lot of different interpretation. And even though we had our point of view, we're certainly open to surprise. Because if we weren't open to surprise, then what's the point of turning on the camera, right? So that was one.